Hey guys, this is just a quick little note to say that the video I recorded for this episode actually died, unfortunately. So the video you're going to see here, I'm going to be talking about Amazons, which I'll go into with the audio that I've already recorded. But for those watching on YouTube, the footage you're about to see doesn't really relate to anything. It's just going to be some background footage. So without further ado, into the episode. Hello everybody, welcome to episode 145, I'm not sure. Quick snap, I'm relaunching it. I know what you're thinking, Nubs, this is, the third time you've tried to relaunch Quick Snap? And yes, you would be correct in saying that. However, this time it's going to be different. Last time around I tried the approach of always sort of having someone else on and having someone with me. This time around, just going to focus on, if we can't get a guest, we're still just going to do an episode, smash it out. This time I'm going to record audio. We're going to put it also on Spotify and iTunes, hopefully, as a bit of a podcasty format. And we're going to go through a whole bunch of different things. I'm going to kick off a series in this episode here where we look at an individual team, or we look at the team, and we sort of break it down, as you can see on the screen here, for those that are just listening to the audio. Today we're going to start with A for Amazons. We're going to have a look into a bit of an introduction of the team, the players, and the makeup of the team. We're going to have a look at some pros, some cons. We're going to have a look at Amazons in league play, and we're also going to have a look at Amazons in tournament play. The idea of these will be to get them out hopefully one every 2 weeks. One every week is probably a little bit of a stretch, I think, because I'm going to try and kickstart the other videos I do on YouTube. So this will hopefully be once every 2 weeks, but who knows, I might have some weeks where I get a little bit more time and I can record sort of 2 or 3 episodes and we can launch one a week. Ideally, I would also like to stream this and then it could become interactive, but at the moment, I'm in my little apartment. For those that are watching the video, they can see the background's different, like I said in one of my other videos, and the internet here is not great. But without further ado, let's launch into it. Quick Snap, the Blood Bowl podcast. Well, one of the Blood Bowl podcasts. There's actually quite a few other good Blood Bowl podcasts, but let's launch into Amazons and have a bit of a look at Amazons, bit of an overview of Amazons. So I've got the roster here. Thank you, Fumble, for having the roster. Fumble's a great website. If you want to play some Blood Bowl, check out Fumble. Very interesting team, Amazons. So your positionals, you've got linemen, you've got throwers, you've got catchers, and you've got blitzers. One thing for those watching that you'll notice straight away is that literally every single player has the same stat line. So move 6, strength 3, agility 3, and armor 7 all across the board on every single player. Every single player on the team also starts with dodge. So for those that haven't played Amazons or are maybe new to the game, that is sort of their thing. They dodge. If we look at line women, they have access to general skills. They also have access on doubles to agility, strength, and passing skills. And they're quite cheap at 50k, but given their armor 7, that 50k starts to add up once you lose a few of them. Moving down, we've got throwers. So you can have 0 to 2 throwers on the team. They start with pass as well as dodge. So they don't start with sure hands. There's no sure hands starting on the team. The throwers get access to general and passing skills on a normal roll, and agility and strength on a doubles, and one of those bad girls will set you back 70k. Catchers, we've got 0 to 2. They start with dodge and aptly catch. They also get access to general and agility on a normal roll, and on a doubles, strength and passing, and they will also set you back 70k. Blitzers, the star of the team, particularly early on. We've got dodge and block, 2 great skills to start with. They get access to general and strength on a normal roll, which is very, very important for this team, and on doubles, agility and passing. 90k, pretty expensive compared to the rest of the team. They're nearly double a lineman or line woman. But with dodge starting dodge and block, the only other player in the game that gets that is War Dancer. So yeah, they're fantastic players. Rerolls are only 50k, so quite cheap rerolls, and they have access to an apothecary because they are not a regenerating team. So pretty I guess, standard across the board. They're almost probably a pretty good team for a starting player to play because they don't have to worry about all these different stat lines because it is all exactly the same. So that's a bit of an overview of the team. So now let's have a look at some pros of the team. As we said before, dodge. Every single player on the team has dodge. It can make it very, very frustrating to play against Amazons if you've got no tackle on the team and some limiting block, or limited block. Early on, they can be an absolute nightmare to play against. You can't knock them down. They stay standing, they clog holes, and they are just, in general, quite an annoying team to play against. And on the flip side of that, they're quite a good team to play with. You don't mind if people man up your line women. You're happy to dodge away with them, and you don't have to use a reroll if they fail. You've got the inbuilt reroll with dodge. Another pro, they get some decent skill access across the board. So the strength skills on the blitzer, like I said, they're quite a crucial part of the team. We'll go into that in a little bit more depth later, but the team being strength 3 all across the board does suffer when they start to come up against some higher strength teams. So having access to guard is really important. Having access to general skills on linemen or line women is really important to give them some block so you can have a team that's all blodge. And also passing access and agility access on doubles. Not that you really need agility access, given that everyone's got dodge, but some sidestep here or there could be good. Another pro is that everyone can play basically any role on the team. You do have your thrower that has pass and your catcher that has catch, but at the same time, everyone is move 6, strength 3, agility 3, so you don't have to try and hand it off to the player that's at 4 or move 8 or move 9 because everyone moves the same amount. Everyone can do the exact same thing. You just have the inbuilt reroll on some players. So having any player or every player be able to do basically everything is a really, really good strength to have in this team. And overall, they're relatively cheap. So the line women are relatively cheap at 50k. And I think 90k for a starting blodge player with strength access isn't too bad, and catchers and throwers aren't too badly priced either. So when you do start suffering some deaths or whatever else in a league, you can usually recover as long as you're winning a few games here or there or you're making some decent winnings rolls. Moving into some cons. Move 6, strength 3, agility 3, armor 7. So it is not an exciting stat line. It is quite a bland and overall average stat line. Move 6, strength 3, agility 3 is the average across the board in Blood Bowl. And armor 7 is actually a little bit below average. I think 8 is considered the average armor in Blood Bowl. So it can be a difficult stat line to play against. You're not particularly fast when you play against the slower teams, and you're definitely not fast when you play against the fast teams. You're not particularly strong when you play against the faster, weaker teams, and you're definitely not strong when you play against the stronger, bashier teams. So that sort of flows into the next con that I have there, which is that it can be difficult for Amazons to capitalize on mistakes that people make. Because again, you are move 6, strength 3, agility 3. You don't have a gutter runner that can sort of run around and pick up the ball. You don't have some big strong player that can punch a hole through someone's line. You are very, very average, and it can be difficult to capitalize on people's mistakes, which means that it gives them time to recover from their mistakes. And it can be a little bit frustrating sometimes. The next con I've got is please don't roll a pow. Because you will play against some people that will roll lots of bows, will have a bit of tackle, will knock you down, and the team just starts to fall apart. That armor 7, they are just paper thin, and the team can explode in an instant. They're just gone. It can be very, very difficult to watch, particularly looking at that second con that I just talked about, when you can't capitalize on someone's mistakes and then they have a turn where they roll a whole heap of powers or their tackle starts to work and your team just falls apart. And finally, the last con that I thought I'd mention is that they do struggle against high strength teams. I haven't explicitly called out that they struggle against sort of your elves or your faster teams with high agility, more so because I think you can ultimately combat that just due to them not being able to sort of knock you down as easy. Hopefully the dodge holds up. Hopefully the elf teams don't have a lot of tackle, and you can sort of plug a lot of lines, make it hard for them to get through. But against the high strength teams, particularly early on, if you don't have a lot of guard, as I said earlier, you are really, really going to struggle to make any inroads on offense and defense. It can be hard to stop sort of Black Orcs rolling down the pitch while blitzers are running around, Orc blitzers are running around smacking you. And then on the flip side of that, it can also be very, very difficult for you to punch through and roll on and get through the Orc defense to be able to score. So in my experience playing Amazons, and I do have probably about 25-30 games under my belt with them, and a relatively decent record on Blood Bowl 2. I think I've only lost 3 games, and all 3 of those games I was very, very outmanned, very, very out-TV'd. I had some sort of record where I was like 15 or 16 games unbeaten with them, despite complaining about the team every time I played them. And the games where I definitely struggled the most was against those high strength teams. The Orcs were always a big struggle. I'm not sure I played any Lizardmen, but I imagine they would struggle against Lizardmen quite a lot. So it can be something that you will have to learn to deal with, and hopefully, if your team is skilling up well, or you've got a tournament build, you've got a decent amount of guard so that you can try and mitigate that a little bit. Moving on to league play. For this sort of structure in league play, or in this sort of, I guess, series that I'm going to do on Quick Snap, I know that there are a whole bunch of different rosters that people could play in league play, but just because I don't want these to sort of go for like 2 hours, particularly when I'm by myself, I'm just going to focus and give you one roster, which is either a roster that I have played before, or a roster that I would play, or a roster that maybe I haven't played but I think is the best roster to start with overall. This one is what I started with when I played Amazons. I know there is another one around where you actually start with 4 rerolls, and instead of having that catcher or having a second catcher, you have just a line woman instead. But I really don't think that if you're planning on playing the Amazons long term that you need 3 rerolls. That you need 4 rerolls. I think 3 is plenty, and given the skills that you do start with, and if we're talking about a world where you're playing with your 1 million TV team against another 1 million TV team, I think this starting roster is the best for your team. So for those that aren't watching the video and maybe listening, I've got 4 blitzers, I've got 2 catchers, I've got 1 thrower, I have 4 line women, I've got 3 rerolls, and I've got an apothecary. So you do get a heck of a lot in your starting roster. You basically get everything you need. The only positional that you miss out on is a second thrower, and I'm not entirely sure that I would even bother having one. It's only a 20k upgrade from a line woman. It does give you that access to passing skills, but I'm not sure that that is all that crucial. I mean, if you wanted to sort of go the route where in a super, super long-term league, you're going to cut a reroll and give one of your throwers leader instead, I think I would run with 2, but I think I would just stick with the 3 rerolls and focus my thrower on being more of a ball handler, giving her block, giving her sure hands, not even necessarily giving her those sort of passing skills. I think this is probably the best roster to start with. I would love to hear any other opinions on rosters. Like I said, I've only played them in the league twice, and both times I started with this roster, so I haven't really played around with it all that much, and haven't really had that much variation on this, I guess. So moving into a bit more of the league play. So blitzers are your key players. I've written early there, but I guess they're not just key players early on, they are probably your key players throughout. Only because they're probably going to skill up a little bit faster than other players on your team. This is, of course, depending on whether you're playing in a tabletop league or whether you're playing in a Blood Bowl 2 or a Fumble League. I'm not sure how Fumble works with the MVPs now, but Blood Bowl 2 still implements the random MVP system, whereas on many tabletop leagues now, or in most, and in the ones I play in, you select 3 players on your team, and the MVP randomly goes to one of those 3 players. Early on, I imagine you're probably going to give it to your blitzers because they're, again, going to be the ones hitting, so probably going to get casualties, get SPPs, etc., etc. And blitzers are so key because if we look at the second point I've got there, guard, and more guard. I think I made the comment the other day because I rolled a doubles on a thrower. I was wondering whether I do something cool, fun, and go with strong arm, or whether I just do what my first natural instinct was and take guard. And the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, if I could give every player on an Amazon team guard, I would absolutely do it. So I gave her guard. It is just such a good skill to have on Amazons, and with the blitzers, you can get guard early on, you can get stand firm early on, and after 2 skills, you've got a player that is so annoying for people to deal with. A blodging stand firm guarder is just an absolute nightmare for someone to have to get through. You can sort of create another blitzer into more of a hitter or an assassin type player where they get tackle, they get frenzy, they get mighty blow, all those sort of skills. But yeah, basically anytime I roll a doubles on the team, I'm giving the person or the player guard. It's just such a crucial skill on this team. The other skill that I haven't got there, but I think it is definitely worth mentioning because it's probably a little bit underrated, particularly for newer players, is kickoff return. So kickoff return really helps to mitigate that average move 6 speed. Being able to move your player 3 squares and position yourself so where you're either under the ball already, or if they've got kick, you're closer to the ball. It's just so important for the team, and it really gives you a chance to scoop up the ball, get to where you want to get, whether that's in the middle of the pitch and caging up, or whether that's down the sideline and you're trying to rush, score early. It just makes a world of difference. The final point that I have for league play is that line women need to do their job, and that is get hit. There will be quite a few times where you're umming and ahhing about whether you should utilize that inbuilt dodge and dodge away with the line woman, or whether you should just have her sit there, take the hits, and hope that they can't punch through and they're just going to keep pushing her around. Eventually they can't get anywhere through because you're screening behind that. There will be times where you do have to just stick line women in spots where you don't want them to be, but that's their job, and that's why they're 50k. They are cheap, they will get hurt, and you can't be afraid to get them hurt in this team, because it's almost preferable to have them go down rather than have your blitzers go down. So yeah, do not be afraid to get the line women hurt. I guess some points that I haven't put there, but a general strategy with Amazons, because they are a little bit slower, is that you probably do cage up on your offense. They're not going to run down and score in 2 turns that reliably. They can definitely do it, but it's not a super reliable strategy. And I find they're able to dictate and play a little bit better, play around with the clock a little bit more if they do just cage up and try and slowly grind down the pitch. They're actually not terrible at it, but you do have to be very conscious that they will run into trouble. You can slowly grind down the pitch with a Wood Elf team, and you can bail yourself out of any trouble very easily because of how fast you are and all of your agility. Amazons don't have that. There will be times where you're looking at it and do you score? Do you wait? I think with Amazons, it's almost always better to score, because you're just going to get yourself caught and you're probably going to end up not scoring. And I'm a big believer in that scoring and giving my opponent 2 turns to score or 3 turns to score and just trusting in my defense is better than me trying to drag out that one more turn, not being able to, and then me not scoring and my opponent getting the ball if it's the first half, going, if I'm in the first half, my opponent gets the ball at the start of the second and they can grind down and score and win 1-0. I think you're always just better off to score and trust in your defense, particularly with Amazons. They do have an okay defense, like I said, because it can be difficult to knock them down and get them out of the way. So we're going to have a look now at tournament play. So this is a handy table here that I got from the NAF website. If you play in tournaments or you've never played in a tournament, go check out the NAF website. I'm not actually sure what it stands for. Nuffles Association Football or something. I'm not sure what it stands for, but go check it out. It's basically the, tournament body for Blood Bowl, and it keeps a whole heap of cool stats. You can sign up and you can have all of your games that you play in NAF approved events recorded. Really, really good, and you can get some really good info from it. I'm not entirely sure who actually created this table and who got the data out and did this, but it's a very, very cool table that I'll probably use a lot in this this series to display or show where the team that I'm talking about sort of ranks or sits in tournament play. As you can see there, so in terms of, I think this has all 24 teams, or it's got Corn now too, and Bretonian, so we're up to 26. Amazon sit quite high on the list, so 2 for 5th down from the top, with a win percentage of 53.65%. This, I think, can largely be contributed to, if we move on here, or when we move on, to them excelling at low TV skill package tournaments, which they play or tend to be predominantly played in Europe, whereas over in Australia, over here, we do have a lot more higher TV tournaments, particularly in Victoria, where I'm from. Sydney and Adelaide sort of have, I guess, a little bit lower TV events, but in Victoria, we tend to prefer our high TV events like 1 million, but then you get sort of 10, 15 extra skills on top of that, 1 million, 250, all things like that. So we do have higher TV events. But yeah, Amazon sit 5th, so they're above teams like Dark Elves, Norse, Chaos Dwarves, Necromantic, Dwarves, Elves, Skaven, High Elves, Khemri. Probably a bit of a surprise for some people to hear that they, in terms of the raw data, sit above Dark Elves and Chaos Dwarves and Dwarves. But the thing you have to remember is that those teams can always be, particularly Dwarves, probably get taken by newer players a lot. And like you can see, Orcs down there, they sit right down the list, and that's because newer players tend to take them because they come in the box set. Humans sit right down the list. Newer players take them. So these numbers, while awesome at a raw level, you do have to take some things into consideration. And so if someone was to ask me, would I rank Amazons above Dark Elves, Norse, Chaos Dwarves, Dwarves, Skaven in a tournament format, I would say that most of the time the answer would be no. Of course, it always does depend on the tournament, but I think those teams do usually sit a little bit higher than Amazons in terms of teams that I would take in tournaments. But moving on, like I said before, they do excel in that lower TV skill package event. That's mostly because, like you saw with the league roster, they get basically everything they want for 1 million or under, whereas some other teams either struggle to get everything they want, like positional player-wise in the 1 million, or they have to give up things like rerolls, things like apothecaries, to get the positional players that they want. You know, maybe you can make a Wood Elf team with your 2 War Dancers and some catchers and everything else, but you're only running with 1 reroll or no rerolls, which can be a little bit risky, whereas with Amazon, you're getting all the players that you want, and you're getting 3 or 4 rerolls, and you're getting an apothecary. So those lower sort of 1 million, and then you get some skills on top, or 1 million, 1.1 million, and get some skills on top events, Amazons tend to do really well at. But on the flip side of that, they do start to struggle in high TV skill restricted events. So when we start talking about tiered events, Amazons do tend to get placed in sort of tier 1, tier 2. And for those that don't play in tournaments or maybe are newer players, what that tends to do is it tends to restrict the amount of a particular skill that you can take. And this is sort of, I guess, to prevent and promote people to think about the skill choices rather than just taking dwarves and spamming guard on everyone or spamming mighty blow on everyone. Makes you have to think about what you're doing a little bit more. And as a byproduct of that, Amazons start to struggle a little bit because suddenly they might only get 2 guard on the team, and the team really needs a little bit more than that. And comparatively, I think that in those sort of tournament scenarios, Amazons get diminishing returns, whereas other teams start to add more tackle to their roster, which combats the Amazons. They start to add mighty blows, they start to add guard, and Amazons, they don't really tend to do as well in those sort of events. And then I do have as a little bit of a fun there for tournament play, just kick a dwarf player and run if you sit down across from him, because unfortunately dwarves are the direct counter to Amazons with all that tackle, all that block, and you can struggle a little bit. But that is everything that we have on Amazons today. Like I said, these are sort of, I guess, designed to be a little bit more streamlined, a little bit fast, a little bit fun, give people a broad overview of what's in the team, what can the team do. I don't want to delve into too much strategy talk, because I think you can do like entire sort of 30-40 minute episodes on strategies with teams. So that's ideally not what this will become. But yeah, that's sort of, I guess, the plan for this is to do either these by myself, or if I can get sort of an expert on who's played the team a lot or has a good amount of experience or whatever it might be, that would be great. But otherwise, the plan is to try and churn these out at least once every 2 weeks, maybe one a week. We'll see how we go. But yeah, I'd love to hear your feedback, whether you're listening to just the audio, what the audio is like. I don't have the best room to record the audio in, so it's not like I've got, a soundproof room or anything like that. There might be other sounds that you can hear going on in the background. For those that are watching the video on YouTube, is what's presented on the screen sort of enough information? Would you like me to have different stuff on there? Are the dot points fine? What would you like to see? Let me know. Send me a message, shoot me a comment, whatever it might be. But until next time, take care, and I will catch you later.